Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, 5 Ways to Build a Better Leadership Development Program. My name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. First, what you should see on your screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the webinar viewer, so this is where you'll see the content that we're sharing with you today. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the control panel. So this is where you can join the audio portion of today's webinar. You can also communicate with us through the question box. The default mode for the control panel is for it to collapse. If you want to open the control panel back up, simply click the orange box with the white arrow in it, and it'll expand for you. All of today's attendees are in listen-only mode. You can join the audio portion of today's webinar either through the teleconference line. You can also listen through your speakers. If you're going to listen through your speakers, I recommend either using a pair of headphones or a headset to get the best audio quality. You should also be able to adjust your audio settings through that speaker that you see there if you need to turn the volume up as well. We like to keep things pretty informal, so if you have any questions or discussion points, feel free to send those over through the question box that's located within the control panel. I like to weave the questions in as it relates to what we're discussing in the webinar, and then I'll also leave some time at the end for a live Q&A. I am recording the webinar today, so I'll make a link to the webinar recording, as well as the slides and follow-up information available on our blog after today's session. So that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. I also put a link to the slides in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and also sent out a link to the slides in the reminder email that you should have received this morning. Today's session is approved for 1 hour CE credit for all of you HR professionals attending. I'll make a link to the completion certificate available at the end of today's session, and I'll also email out the completion certificate to all of today's attendees within 24 hours. The most important thing is the program ID number or the activity ID number. That's what you'll need to record with HRCI. If you'd like more information on certification or recertification, I encourage you to visit hrci.org. Again, my name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary. Graduated from the University of Missouri-Columbia with a degree in journalism. Been working in the training and development industry now for about 5 years. I'm very active in social media, so I tweet on behalf of BizLibrary at BizLibrary and also at my own account at Jess L. Petrie. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I like to share a lot of articles and discussions around human resources, training and development, and marketing. So if you're on either of those social networks, would love it if you'd reach out and connect. Presenting with us today is Chris Osborne. Chris is the VP of Marketing for BizLibrary. He's also worked in a consulting capacity with a Paris-based leadership development consulting firm where he helped organizations design and implement leadership and executive development programs. He's been performing learning, development, and training functions formally since 2000 and informally for organizations since 1987. Prior to Chris's move into the business sector, he practiced law in the areas of labor, employment, and business litigation for over 12 years. He graduated from WashU School of Law with honors in 1987. Chris is also active in social media, so you can find him on Twitter at Chris Osborne STL, and he's also on LinkedIn. So really happy to have him here presenting with us today. He's very passionate about leadership and leadership development, so it's always a fun webinar for the both of us, so hopefully you think so as well. Just a reminder, if you have any questions or discussion points, we like to keep things informal, so feel free to send those over throughout the webinar. Just to give you a little bit of background on BizLibrary, BizLibrary is the leading provider of online employee training and e-learning solutions. The award-winning content library contains more than 7,000 online employee training videos covering every business training topic. So that includes communication skills, leadership and management, sales and customer service, compliance training, safety, desktop computer skills, and more. Additionally, BizLibrary's LMS, or Learning Management System, and social learning technology platform help HR and training leaders improve and manage employee learning. All right, so enough about us. I have a quick poll question to learn a little bit more about the attendees that we have with us today. So you should see the poll pop up on your screen in just a moment. So this is a kind of yes, no, with a little bit of descriptor with it. So we have reevaluated leadership competencies for our organization in the past 6 to 12 months. Is it A, no, we don't have established competencies, B, no, we haven't reevaluated, C, no, but we'd like to, or yes, we have? or E something else.
Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Another, by the way, well done on the poll. This is another really good one. Um, it doesn't make any difference. This helps us understand kind of where you are as an audience in this, but it doesn't make any difference what your answer is. We're going to have something for everybody. So if you haven't established competencies in an odd kind of way, in my old consulting world, that was the ideal situation to walk into, somebody that's interested, but they haven't gone down any wrong paths yet, and we can really get things going. No, we haven't reevaluated. I think we're going to give you some interesting things to think about, and sort of a starting place for a reevaluation. Same thing with no, but we'd like to. This is not a mysterious process. A lot of organizations and a lot of people that function in the consulting world like to make this seem like it's very mysterious, and you need all kinds of magic, but you don't. And then those of you that have done this, this will be a great kind of check-in to see if you've considered some of the evolving trends and some of the things we're going to talk about today, and then we're going to give you some best practices on how to really take those competencies and make them live and breathe and deliver results for you. So I think we've got something for everybody today.
Yeah, so whether you're, using competencies formally in your leadership development program, or if you're doing a little bit more informally, so you have an idea of the key competencies that you're training to, but you haven't made it specifically a competency-based training program. There's really something for everyone. It's more just to get you thinking about what you're expecting of your leaders and what your leaders need to be successful.
Yeah,
All right.
Good clarification.
Cool. It looks like we've got good participation in the poll, so I'm going to go ahead and close it out, share the results with everyone. So it looks like we've got 33% says yes, say yes they have. 24% said no, we don't have established competencies. 22% no, we haven't reevaluated. 15% no, what we'd like to, and 6% said something else.
Yeah, interesting mix. So 1 in 3 have. Again, I think we've got something for you. But for the rest of us participating today, I think this could be hopefully a provocative webinar to get you to think about this a little differently maybe than traditional leadership development folks have. I know this is some of the content we've got for you today represents a shift in my thinking over the years that I've been working in this space. So fun stuff.
Yeah, so go ahead and hide it. So there's kind of, whoops. So there's 3 main things that we're going to cover today. So Chris, if you want to highlight those for us, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me get my screen rolling here. And hopefully, Jessica, that's the slide that you see. Is that right?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Super. All right, so we want to talk about 3 important things. And we start with sort of an exploration of why leadership development is important. I know if you're here today, you get that, but we want to lay out some of the business case reasons for this as you begin to think about budget and how to build some a sense of urgency around making these programs work. I think some of the information we can share with you will really help. Then we want to talk about the challenges faced by today's leaders, and they are different than they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. And it's going to be really important, I think, as you work your way towards an established set of competencies to your organization and building a program to teach and develop towards those competencies. This really needs to be front and center in terms of how do we get our leaders to function effectively in this environment, and more importantly, how do we prepare our leaders to take our organization into this kind of interesting and challenging future. And then we have some best practices. There are some things that best in breed, best practices programs do effectively, and we'll talk about each of those and how to implement them and give you some ideas on some of that. So, all right, so let's jump in. Let's talk about why leadership development is really important, and this will begin to hint at some of these challenges as well. By 2020, just think about that, 25% of the workforce will be aged 55 and up. So 1 in 4 of us working out here are going to be within a few years of retiring. And then half of the workforce are going to be millennials. So that is a really, really interesting dynamic. And it creates a lot of tension and stress in organizations. So these older employees, how do you find ways to keep them engaged, interested, productive, happy? Are they all current managers? Are they all current leaders? How are you dealing with all of that? And with your millennials, is this a group of employees that's going to be satisfied waiting 10, 12, 15 years to move into more complex leadership roles? And if not, how do you prepare the workplace for that shift? So there's a lot of interesting challenges associated with this massive demographic shift. And as older employees, I'll count myself in this category, as these employees prepare to exit the workplace, I mean, think of all the things that they walk out the door with. Their experience, which is valuable, the inside knowledge they have of the company, the industries. I mean, there's just all kinds of important bits of information and value that they carry with them that we have to figure out what we're going to do with it. How can we capture that? How can we make that available and accessible to more and more employees? This is a great quote from Rebecca Ray, and she said this in a paper that was delivered, and it was called Employee Engagement in a VUCA World. And VUCA is an acronym that we're seeing more and more and more applied to describe the current marketplace, and it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So with each generation entering the workplace, a greater emphasis is placed on continual development as the new employees know that they're unlikely to stay more than a few years. It's about what they can develop and acquire to take to the next stop in the career journey. We know that effective leaders are one of the most important influences on levels of engagement. There's a funny cartoon that has gone around that I really love, and it's a CEO talking to a CFO. And the CFO says, well, what if we spend all this time and money to train these employees and then they leave? And the CEO responds, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? And it really identifies exactly, and this is Rebecca Ray's quote, captures the same idea. There's some tension for us in the learning and development portions of our organizations about this very issue. We know that employees are more mobile than they've ever been before. We know that millennials, Gen Xers, and even for that matter, a lot of us that are later in our careers, we're not looking at our current job as the lifetime stop. We're thinking about what can we learn and contribute here, and what can I do to build my credentials and my marketability for my next stop in the career journey. Now, for many of us, we hope that that next stop is in our current organization. But for many of us, it won't be. So it gets back to the thing, well, what if we don't train them in this day? We don't have a choice. We have to develop employees. And leadership development becomes even more important in this type of a marketplace when we know that that relationship between the employee and their immediate supervisor is so critical to engagement, retention, productivity, profitability. This is no longer something that is just optional. So just the various challenges created, think about that VUCA quote, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Think about all the things that we're faced today in greater degrees and having to react and respond and be adaptable in more challenging ways. The uncertainty of the marketplace. We don't really know what's coming next. What's going to be the next great innovation that's going to impact our industry, that's going to impact our organization, that's going to impact my team, the speed with which we need to work today. And I would add to that, the speed with which we need to adapt is never been greater. And we mentioned the workplace demographics. It's just a complicated workplace. So what do you need your leaders to do to be successful? Ultimately, this becomes the overriding and overarching strategic question that you have to begin with. What do you need your leaders to do to be successful, both today and in terms of preparing our organization and our employees for success in the future? Jessica mentioned I've done a lot of work, consulting work in this space. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. And I've seen an amazing evolution into thinking about leadership theories. There's the great man theories, group theories, trait theories, behavioral theories. The trait and behavioral theories, the emergence of those in the late 50s into the 60s, those were actually significant advances in leadership, thought leadership around leaders, leader development, because it was the first time that the industry recognized that we can, in fact, train and develop leaders. That was the first time that really gained traction. And we've seen additional theories pop up, contingency, situational theories, excellence theories, which has really had a lot of traction in the late 70s into the 80s and 90s, and then most recently this transactional, transformational theories. We don't need transactional leaders, we want transformational leaders. And how do you do that? I did a lot of consulting in that space over the years. In the end, it really comes down to a couple of simple questions. But now we've got this new emerging theory, the social or connected leadership theory, which I find fascinating, by the way, particularly as we see more and more millennials in our workplace. We'll talk about that in just a second. But ultimately, these are the two things at a very high level that we need our leaders to do. We need leaders to explain where we're going and why we're going there. It's the vision, that vision thing, to quote a politician. But it's important that leaders can make this clear to the organization. And if you think about really successful organizations, large organizations, or really successful campaigns or programs of any type, successful sports teams, they typically, not 100% of the time, but typically have a clarity around the vision that other organizations struggle to achieve. Where are we going and why are we going there? And then the next piece of it is the strategy. Okay, now how will we get there? And those are ultimately, regardless of the theory that you adhere to, regardless of the competencies that work in your organization, regardless of how leaders accomplish these two things, this is it. This is at a foundational level. If your leaders do these two things well, your organization is probably in really good leadership hands. Jessica, anything to add to this before I jump into the best practices?
No, Chris, I think it gives us a good foundation and frameworks to kind of help us understand where these best practices are coming from.
All right, and that was, if we did that, mission accomplished. This is great stuff. Okay, so here you go. Great leadership programs, the best-in-breed programs, share common characteristics, common traits, however you want to describe them. But here they are. Strong executive involvement, and that word choice is very deliberate. We'll explain why in just a moment. Tailored leadership competencies. In other words, competencies that are appropriate for your organization. And those competencies are aligned with business strategy. Again, where are we going and why, and how are we going to get there, okay? And then the next two pieces are really important because these have to do with the actual structure of programs. One is you target multiple levels of leadership, from your executives to your entry-level managers, everybody. Great programs are very inclusive. They're not just about developing executives. That's important, but they're inclusive. And then the last piece, adults, all of us, we learn best by doing, and that's true with leadership programs as well. You have to find ways for people that are in development and working on, building out or enhancing competencies or skills. We have to find ways to give them an opportunity to apply what they're learning so they can test and try some things out. All right, so let's start with executive involvement. Jessica mentioned a little while ago that I'm a recovering lawyer, and once in a while the lawyer in me rears its ugly head. And this is one of those cases, and it has to do with word choice. Word choice really is important here. We didn't say executive support. We mean involvement, true involvement. Now, I'm going to talk about Jack Welch for just a minute. Now, whether you're a fan of his or not, It's okay. But the leadership program at GE has turned into sort of an incubator for, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, or many, many of them that came directly out of the program at GE. And one of Jack Welch's requirements for all of his senior executives was that they spend 20% of their time developing junior executives. Now, it's one day in 5. Now, I'm not expecting organizations that are participating with us today to make that kind of a commitment, but that'll give you a sense, at least from one program that we can hold up as an exemplary model for really making a commitment to developing leaders and a next generation of leaders. That'll give you an idea of the extent of the involvement of the executives at that organization. Again, for smaller organizations, mid-sized organizations, we don't have the luxury to do that frequently, but your executives do have to be involved. One of the questions we get, it's a common question that we see in this webinar, is, okay, so I get it, but how do I get my executives to understand that? And you do it with the hint that we provided here. You have to learn and be able to make a clear connection between improving your leadership's performance and improving bottom line results. Now, for those of us that are passionate about this, for those of us that really enjoy leadership development and talking about training and development, that is obvious as the nose on our faces. It's there. We get it. Intuitively, we get it. We understand the connection between improved skills and improved performance for the organization. Our CEOs and CFOs need a more direct connection. We have to learn to speak their vocabulary using terms that they understand, which means we talk about profits, business benefits. We're going to be 5% more accurate. We're going to improve quality. We're going to retain 10% more of our customer base. We're going to improve sales by 3% or 5%. You have to learn to make those connections in order to drive this. Jessica, I see a good question that popped up. I think it would be a good time to take it.
Yeah, question from Deanne. So she asked, getting leadership to make decisions is like pulling teeth. They want to do training, but they just aren't willing to implement anything. How do I get them to act?
This is how you do it. Again, going right back to what I said before, you have to provide that motivation using things that are important to senior executives. Financial results. Talk about key employee retention, improve the organizational IQ, improve the ability of the organization to move quickly. Whatever it is you're focusing your leadership development program on, you likely have in your mind a connection between this program and these results. Make that connection clear and obvious. That's how you have to do this. A lack of decisiveness on the part of executives is not, unfortunately, not uncommon. They'd rather wait, and that whole paralysis by analysis thing. But you have to feed that data information beast a little bit by providing the impetus, the motivation to make a move. In other words, you have to prove to them that leaving things as they are, the status quo, is riskier for the business than making this investment and spending this time. So if we stay the way we are, we can expect improved sales of 3 to 5% a year. Our competition is improving sales 12 to 15%. We're going to continue to see market share erode. So which direction do we go? Do we want to get better at these things, i.e. with our leaders, or are we going to retain the status quo and continue to perform as we're? You have to show that the risks of the status quo outweigh the risks and potential benefits of making a move. And it's not hard to do. There's a lot of great data out there that really help prove this. You can find research, it's all over the internet, about the impact of leadership, the performance of leadership on employee engagement. And we know how important employee engagement is. Organizations with high levels of employee engagement are more profitable, have greater market share, have greater levels of customer satisfaction. I mean, employee engagement drives so many things, and our leaders have a very direct impact. It's a straight line. It's a straight line connection between the performance of our managers on the engagement of the employees that report to them. This can improve retention of key employees. It can improve, organizational output, quality, cost, time. It doesn't matter what the impact is. You have to find it, measure it, and deliver the communication to the top of your organization using those terms and conditions. Speak that vocabulary. Speak the vocabulary of the C-suite, and you're going to get them, one, to make a decision, and two, to be involved. That's a critically important element of it. So that covers our first best practice, okay? So the second one is targeted competencies, leadership competencies. What is it that we need our leaders to do to be successful? And this is a piece of this puzzle that I think a lot of organizations don't get quite right. And the reason is many organizations focus on the here and now. So we've got these issues today, so how do we move, how do we improve these specific problems? Now, I don't want to diminish the importance of that. That is extremely important. But frequently, the analysis ends there, and it can't. You have to look ahead, too. What do we expect the market to be like in 6 months and 12 months? What do we expect our place in the market to be like in 6 months and 12 months? Are we ready to seize opportunities because our leaders are agile and adaptable? Are we ready to seize opportunities because our leaders can take our sales and marketing teams to that place and help us reach a new market? Are we adaptable because our HR recruiters are adept at finding the skill sets we need to be successful going out? So you have to focus on both the present, but also, polish up your crystal ball a little bit, but you have to look ahead a little bit too, so that your program is viable and relevant today and 6 months and 12. So you also have to build in some flexibility. So here are ways to do this. You focus on people development. Really find quality individuals to focus on. This is a really important piece of this. Don't get too focused on specific job roles or whatever. These, by the way, we borrowed these from an article that appeared in Forbes magazine, written by Mike Myatt, called the number one reason leadership development fails. And it's a provocative article. There's some pieces in it that I don't particularly agree with. His word choice is a little harsh in places. But this is really a great framework to think about how to move from sort of a transactional leadership development approach to something that really can build the capacity of your organization to succeed in the future. We have to look to the future. We have to look ahead. We have to figure that out. And we want to focus on maximizing the potential of not only the individuals that we're working with, but the organization as well. That's a big piece of this. It's about maximizing potential, which means we're focused on growth in education, not just on skills development today. There are certain skills we need to improve to keep our teams moving, but what are the skills and competencies necessary for success in 2 or 3 years? I was just invited to do a presentation for the local chapter of the American Marketing Association and about marketing automation, and I did a little bit of digging, and one of the big issues that organizations are having implementing that is that there are so few people with great experience in marketing automation. Well, it's critical. So if you're looking to hire outside or find experience in that specific space, you're going to be disappointed. On the other hand, if you look at your marketing team, look to the future. Here's where we need to be. We need to be good at this. You maximize the potential of the people on the team and focus on growing them and educating. In other words, building skills for job roles, job functions, processes that don't exist today becomes extremely important in this process, which means we're challenging the status quo. Why do we need to do this? Well, we have to shake things up a little bit, and ultimately, the focus of all of this development has to be on helping people perform at a higher level, and that is really critical. I love this quote. This is from that article from Mike Myatt. Training focuses on best practices, while development focuses on next practices. I love that simple, easy way to understand it. We do need to focus on best practices because we have to function. We have to do well today. But our leadership development programs what we are developing, the capacity, the potential, maximizing the potential. We want to focus on what the organization and what these individuals need to do next. Anyway, a really interesting quote, very provocative article. I recommend it. Just recognize that when you do look it up, you're gonna be challenged in it a little bit. And I don't agree with all of the word choice, but the lesson, the message in that article is very good. Jessica put this fabulous slide together, which I really love because it illustrates on the left-hand side kind of a traditional view of leadership competencies. And on the right-hand side, we've got some competencies that we see, and some thought leaders in the space see, as emerging, evolving, if you want to look at it that way, but gaining in importance for organizations that are determined to be successful in a world characterized by the acronym VUCA. Okay, so if you go back and look, and I have looked at many leadership competency maps and competency models, beginning when they first started to emerge in the 50s all the way just recently, you will see a traditional approach to leadership that looks something like that. It'll have some variation of these: vision, interpersonal skills, ability, intelligence, character. Now, we're not trying to say that, for instance, intelligence and character don't remain important. They do. But what we're starting to see is the evolution of leadership based upon the demographics, the technology advances, the marketplace, into something that looks like the column on the right. Leaders that are good at collaboration. Leaders that exhibit learning agility, the ability to acquire new skills, the ability to function and be decisive in unfamiliar situations. People development, that remains important, but that focus on people. Digital literacy. Think about all of the productivity innovations that are all over your organization. Just think of all of them. If you can think of one that doesn't have at its core a digital element, I'd be really surprised. If it's in human resources, operations, logistics, all of the innovations, all of the time saving, cost savings, all of the things that are making organizations more productive, more effective, more profitable, tend to have a common theme. They tend to be digital. And we need leaders that function well in that space. And then global citizenship is exactly what it sounds like, the ability to connect what is happening in your organization to a broader marketplace really becomes important. So then the third of the 5 best practices is taking the leadership competencies that you need in your organization based upon your vision of success, where you are, where you need to go, and ensure that your program is aligned with your business strategy and your business needs. So, do you need to build successors? Do you need bench strength in your organization? Are we focused on, keeping these high potential employees, these really high value employees around? Is this something that's important to us? Great programs also help set organizational standards and reaffirm cultural norms. I'm going to use BizLibrary as an example. We have this thing we call Smarter Every Friday. So one of the things that we're working with is a new set of leaders around here that is designed to encourage a commitment to continuous improvement learning. So that's one way that works. So what are the key cultural standards that make your organization unique or set a creative or competitive advantage for you? Your leadership development program should work to reinforce those things, amplify those things. And last but not least, we want to develop and engage employees. Then the next piece of this, and this is another place where I've seen organizations really fall flat, to be perfectly honest about it, is we need to target multiple levels. I mentioned earlier that we see best-in-breed programs be very inclusive. And I've seen a lot of great programs focus on the executive level. Great executive development program, executive commitment to improvement there. The executives are engaged. There's a financial commitment to it. And then not much else is done for the remainder of the organization. Or we have a great succession plan. We're really working on our future leaders, but there's not much for existing mid-level managers or executives. We tend to have sort of this myopic focus on the problems we're facing today rather than a broader perspective, a broader, more strategic perspective on the need for increased and improved performance or sustained excellence in performance broadly across the organization. So that's why you have to target multiple levels of your organization. Do focus on executives. They need help in development. That's not hard to understand or even see. Mid-level managers, extremely important people that manage other managers. A critical segment of this is our frontline and new managers. And an emerging leader in many organizations are technical and professional employees, architects, engineers, web developers, or webmasters, attorneys. I mean, think of people that have a very specialized function with your organization. They may not lead a lot of other people, but they may lead your organization in a functional area and have a very, very critical role in the success of your organization. Don't omit them in your leadership development programs. Jessica, looks like a really good question from Tom there.
Yeah, so Tom asks, how can you get each level needed engaged so that as a leader moves up, that mentoring and coaching or formal program continues?
Well, ultimately that's what you're trying to do with your program, is you want to build a program that's sustainable and begins to just build momentum for itself, and that's ultimately exactly what you want to do. You want to move leaders up so that they help develop those employees below. So you do it in 3 ways. First, you set it as an expectation. This is what you will do. Go back to the GE example, 20% of the time. Now, again, that's pretty extreme, but you make it an expectation. As a leader, this is what you will do. You will develop your team. If you lead other managers, you will develop those managers. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to prove to those leaders that getting the leaders and people below them to work at a higher level makes their jobs easier, more effective, makes them look better. In other words, the old-fashioned, what's in it for me? Prove that there's benefit to them for doing it. And the third thing you have to do is don't leave them without sort of that life preserver, without the support necessary for that to happen. Our managers, our executives, our frontline new managers, they are not learning and development professionals. They may not be wired and motivated the same way that we are. So you have to provide tools and help and support along the way. So those are the 3 ways to do it. Nothing magic there. You have to roll up your sleeves, dive in, and work really hard with them. But if you'll do those 3 things, you have a pretty good chance at success. All right, so let's talk about the development. Go ahead, Jessica.
2 more questions around the levels, and I know we're going to go into more in detail, but I think these might help also. So this one's from Elaine. So she asks, when you say target multiple levels, are these training sessions at each level, or are you referring to inviting all the levels into the same training program to get different perspectives on the same topic?
Well, I'm going to refer back to my lawyer days and give you a total lawyerly answer. It depends. I know that's not really a great answer, but I think it is the correct answer. There could be circumstances, I mean, go back to what we said about great programs. They set standards and help build cultural norms, okay? So think about how that works. If you're doing sort of horizontally segregated sessions, you don't get a chance to do that broadly across your organization. So there may be times when it makes a lot of sense to get all of your leaders together in some way, some fashion, for conversations, for meetings, for mentoring, for coaching, for off-site meeting. I mean, there's some real value to that in terms of helping, move your organizational culture to the way where you need it, or to maintain it if that's the desire. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think in other times, you're going to need individually focused programs. Everybody's development needs are not the same. Use executives as a great example. You have a vice president of sales, vice president of marketing, vice president of operations, vice president of finance. They all need different types of development. At a high level, they need motivation, strategy, innovation skills to keep your organization moving. One thing that I've seen and many organizations experience is the people that rise to those levels have done so because they're really driven, really powerful personalities, but they don't always play well in the sandbox together. So peer-to-peer collaboration becomes important. That's another great way to involve broader levels of the organization together to encourage that type of collaboration. And then we just have to have highly focused programs. In many many organizations and many executives benefit greatly from an outside executive coach. So this is just three development elements that we see as contributing to the success of executive development. We have some fantastic resources in our training collection that are aimed right at the executive level. These quick talks are short, targeted 2, 3, 4-minute pieces where you get one really provocative, interesting nugget of information delivered in a video format. So this is an example of an online resource that can be targeted to executives that tie right into that. So the next level we wanted to talk about was sort of the technical professional leaders in our organization. Engineers, architects, people that are incredibly smart, really, really brilliant frequently in their silo. Developers, think of web developers, really brilliant in a silo. Well, what we have to do with these individuals is broaden their skill set. So they need just leadership fundamentals. They frequently need just to develop business acumen. They know a lot about a specific thing, but not more broadly about how what they do impacts the business generally. And frequently, these professionals can benefit greatly from communication skills development. A lot of them need technical development opportunities, project management, formal certification. Again, HR is a great illustration of that. If we have certified HR professionals, we cannot leave that out of our development efforts. We have to make sure that we help keep their certifications active and up to date. And a lot of these folks benefit greatly from learning at the time of need, so they're having on-demand material or access to on-demand resources that they can look at right when they need it. So think about online delivery of targeted content to them. Can work really well. And here's some examples of some e-learning projects or e-learning resources that, again, we have access to that can help do that. The course on the left is a traditional e-learning course about certification of Six Sigma. The other is more of a sort of performance support thing. I've got a developer. I need help on, a Microsoft project, and here's a 2-minute how-to on a very specific, narrowly focused issue. So again, these are examples of the type of learning resources that are available out there. And as you're thinking about, we're going to go to the mid-level managers, but before we get there, I wanted to introduce the idea here. A research study done by Burson by Deloitte asked a group of CEOs, actually several thousand CEOs, what were the current capabilities that they saw as missing in their mid-level managers. These are the major managerial skill gaps: coaching, performance appraisals, developing others, managing change, communications, business acumen. You want a really great 6-element curriculum for developing your mid-level managers? Here it is. That's just outstanding. And we need all of that. Okay? So our mid-level managers need development frequently in those specific targeted topic areas. But we have to deliver that in ways that are going to resonate, and so they can absorb it, understand it, and then apply it. So we want to make sure we provide lots of blended learning opportunities. And I'm not talking about a classroom session with video in it, although classroom sessions can be important. I'm talking about a true, cohesive, comprehensive, blended learning approach that helps them access social information, social learning, helps reinforce the on-the-job informal learning that they're going to do, plus the formal training, both maybe in person, maybe a lot of online resources, giving them access to a mentor, there's a whole range of ways that we can do that, but a cohesive and comprehensive blended learning approach. Learning resources targeted to their role of managing other managers is going to be important. It is not always easy to do. One thing that we've seen work very, very well in organizations that can get a little creative about this is job rotation, stretch assignments, and then a lot of feedback in mentoring. Jessica, I see a question about the term business acumen. Is that right?
Yeah, can you elaborate on what you mean by business acumen and how it can help that specific level of leaders?
Business acumen is a term that's used to describe just a general understanding of the way your industry, your business functions, develops a market, brings customers in, and actually makes money. In other words, just an understanding of how the business functions. Now, you don't have to be an accounting expert or a web development expert, but understand at a high level what those departments do and what their needs are. So as you start to think through all the different issues and challenges relating to managers and leaders, they have to be able to connect the dots differently in organizations than individual contributors who sometimes work very well in a silo where they don't have a high level of business acumen. But think about the best sales and customer service professionals that you've come across over the course of your lifetime. These are people that really understand businesses and generally the types of issues and challenges your business faces. That's business acumen. So how can I connect what I'm doing more broadly to the needs of our business and how we fit into the marketplace? So I know it's a little bit of a convoluted explanation, but at its core, that's what business acumen means. Doris, let us know if that explanation helped. Jessica, did that make sense to you?
Yeah, it did. Makes sense
Okay,
to me.
good. All right. So again, this is a great set of learning sort of elements necessary for mid-level managers. We've got a couple of great courses to illustrate too. These are good examples of online. I looked at this impedership as opposed to leadership, impedership. I watched that video the other day. It is great, but what a great term, impedership. Anyway, good stuff. And then last but not least is the ability to apply what you're learning as you go. Learn while you work while you learn. We learn best when we're given opportunities to apply the new things we're absorbing, the new things we're picking up quickly. So think about using social media tools for recruiting purposes. So let's say you have somebody, a boomer, my age, so you've got who's not necessarily social media literate. So you provide training on social media, and you do it in a classroom, spend all day talking about Twitter, how to use it, how to connect with people on LinkedIn, how to use the messaging, how to look people, and then a week and a half later, the boomer's sitting in his office kind of going, okay, now, how did I do that in Twitter? It's not always very effective, is it? On the other hand, if you're providing learning and learning resources right then, and they can go immediately and build a new profile on Twitter and look people up and connect with people in LinkedIn and revise their profile, it's a whole different animal in terms of retention and the ability to apply what they've learned immediately. So there's a whole range of ways that you can do this. Going back to that idea of business acumen, job rotation is a great way to do that. Move, especially your younger managers, move them through your organization to, give them projects to work on where they have to work with emerging leaders or new leaders in other disciplinary functions to tackle a problem. It's a great way to begin to build that broader understanding of what's going on. Action learning projects, if you have a customer service problem that your customer service team just can't get to because of time, assign a bunch of young, motivated people to tackle it. Those are great. That's a great way to build task forces or project teams, and mentoring programs are great. Now the beautiful thing about all of these pieces, none of these require the investment for an outside resource. You're limited only by your own imagination and the commitment you, your organization, your executives can make to making that happen. So that's the piece of this that I love the most. I love this quote. Jessica, you found this slide. I totally love it, but I just want to, experience is a hard teacher. She gives the test first, the lessons afterwards. And that's exactly why we do it. We learn as we go. Now, the thing that comes with that, and this is what you have to get comfortable with, is giving people the freedom to fail and the space to fail sometimes. As long as we learn and we're making an effort, then we can't look at mistakes as something that create a lot of stress for folks. We have to make sure that they understand, okay, so that didn't work the way you wanted it to. Why? And let's figure out what we can do differently next time. And that's the beauty of it. Experience is a hard teacher, but man alive, she's a phenomenal instructor, mentor, and tutor. Okay, so to quickly summarize, these are the 5 best practices that we see in organizations that really deliver the goods on leadership development programs. Strong executive involvement, not just support. Leadership competencies that are tailored to meet the needs of your organization, both today and tomorrow, which means they're aligned with your business strategy. Where are you going? why are you going there, and how are you going to get there, so your leaders are really able to deliver the goods on that. Then we want you to think about ways to target multiple levels of leadership to provide appropriate opportunities and skill development, and then give people opportunities to learn by doing. Jessica, we've got a wonderful case study, and you put this together, and if you don't mind, I'd love for you to tell the story about Valley Technologies to the audience today.
Sure, Chris, happy to do so. So this is a quick case study on one of our clients, Valley Technologies. So they're a worldwide gaming organization. So they have a little under 2,500 employees. They identified their primary organizational strategic objective as improving employee morale and increasing key employee retention. So they kind of encompass each of these best practices within it. So if you think about how their leadership development is aligned with their business strategy, so their overall goal is improve morale and retention. So that's what it was developed to do. All right, so it's called Valley's Excellence in Leadership Program, and includes participants that they have identified as high performers with growth potential. So this goes across all levels of the organization. The participants start the program with a 360-degree review, and they're also partnered with a mentor. That mentor then coaches his or her assigned employee towards different learning opportunities that they think will help provide the best overall development outcomes. So some of those learning opportunities includes, courses from BizLibrary's online collection. They have leadership in classroom training, roundtable discussions, special presentations from the executive leaders in the organization, as well as invitations to participate in things like senior management meetings. So things that depending on what level they are, they may not have the opportunity to do so before. So some of the key factors that have contributed to the success of the program. So first, the selection of their participants. So they select and effectively identify high-performing, high-potential employees. Part of that is through that 360-degree review. They've included group interaction, so it's not just all self-study or all instructor-student study. So it's really kind of a social interaction. They provide opportunities for the group to meet together. So whether that's in person or if it's a virtual opportunity, it helps to kind of foster those relationships that can also turn into different partnerships across different projects within the organization. They also have a committed coordinator, so someone that's owns the program and is committed to the success of the program. And then also the last thing they have is strong executive involvement and recognition. So program participants, they get a certificate at their graduation luncheon. It's presented by the CEO of the organization, and also all the executives also attend that. So it helps really build buzz around the program and help establish it as a key piece and key element of success in their organization overall. So some of the things, so we talked about, selecting competencies that are relevant for your organization. So this is going to be a mix of things that you could consider generic, so it could be applied to different organizations across different industries. So things like goal attainment, customer focus, those are things that can mean different things to different organizations but can be applied differently in your organization. But they've also included things like Valley products and Gaming 101. So these would be more in line with business acumen. So what's important to employees in their industry and in their organization. So some of the things that they measured, so think back to the key organizational goals. So 80% of the participants graduated from the program, and those that graduated, 30% earned promotions within the first 3 months of graduating from the program, and all of the employees that participated were retained in the organization. So that's 100% retention rate. So that's kind of a quick overview of the case study, kind of to give you a real-world example of how it can maybe work in your own organization. I've also have some recommended resources. So Chris talked about some of these within the webinar today. So it includes things that are a little bit more like performance support, so like that Microsoft Project course. Some of the leadership lesson videos, these are actually some of my favorite courses that are included in the collection because it gives you kind of one key takeaway, and it's from people that are actually working in the business world. So it's from CEOs of different organizations. It comes from authors and thought leaders and different people like that. So these recommended resources and more are all included in the BizLibrary collection. So you're welcome to try them out or any of the other 7,000 plus courses that we have included if you'd like to do a free 30-day trial. I'll put up a quick poll and just let me know if you're interested in trying out those resources. All right, Chris, are you ready for some questions?
I should say no, because the three that I want to tackle are really hard today. But yes, I am ready.
All right, so this first question is from Andri. So they ask, how do you train inclusive and balance the demands of the current role?
Well, first, all three of the questions we're going to tackle here, I hope, are really hard, and this is a hard one. There isn't an easy answer to this, Andri. I wish that there was. But this is where you have to get all of the stakeholders to understand what's going on first, why it's important second, and what the expected benefits are third. Okay? Then you have to make it clear to the supervisor of the employee you're talking about, whether it's a manager or another leader, that this development is important, and both of you have to make space for this to happen. Again, there isn't an easy way to do it, but ultimately that's the juggling act that you have to work your way through. The other part of this, step back and think about it for just a second. In a world described by the acronym VUCA, where organizations are having to move quickly and do so many things and be adaptable, one of the key competencies that we need as leaders in those organizations is the ability to focus on a couple of different important things at the same time. So maintaining your day-to-day work plus creating the time and space and owning the responsibility for development, it can all be done. And I would suggest that when you see leaders participating in your development program that do that successfully, you're seeing potential really high performers there.
All right, this next question is from Bai. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, but this one comes from the higher education realm. So in higher education, the faculty see themselves as the institution, which is not a business. Since they are the experts, they know how to do everything. Leadership development on the business side of the institution take away resources from the primary purposes of higher education, creation of new knowledge and teaching students. Any suggestion for bringing together this two-headed monster?
Well, with a lot of direct personal experience in higher ed, I do have a couple of suggestions for you. One is senior, support, executive support from the top of the institution for the development of staff. That's the first thing that has to happen. If that's not there, you're really not going to get very far. Second, when you do have that kind of support, can you think of ways to give the individuals who you want to develop control or autonomy over their own learning in a cost-effective way? Now, I'm asking a bit of a leading question there because one of the great answers is a tool like BizLibrary, where you can provide a lot of content and access to an online collection of content that people don't have to wait for a meeting or a workshop to get the development opportunities. That's another way to get at that. And then third, going back to what I said before, the people that participate, you have to make it clear, hey, look, your mission is still this, but I need you to learn in this area. And watching how people balance that's going to give you a good sense of their capacity for growth as an employee.
All right, this next question is from Denise. So she asks, our organization is going through an executive transition. What can be done when upper-level management is not sharing departmental information to members of their staff because of insecurities, and how can this be resolved when it prevents mid-level managers of being effective in their position?
Well, this goes back to, I mentioned this earlier, but this is really a perfect illustration of why that, WIIFM is so important. What's in it for me? If the mid-level managers below your seniors are not able to perform, how does that reflect on the senior leader who manages those people? Poorly, very poorly. In fact, I tell my team all the time, kind of joking, but their primary job is to make me look good. That's kind of the way it goes, and that's what you have to teach your senior leaders is, look, the people below you, if they're performing poorly, they don't have the information that you're holding close to the vest to do their jobs well, this is a reflection on your performance as the senior leader. That's really how you have to do it, and that's the way you're going to be able to get the accountability that you need in order to modify those behaviors.
Okay, one more question because Sue really wants me to answer it, and it comes from Sarah. So she asks, how can we provide opportunities for our leaders to learn by doing while minimizing the risks associated with mistakes or failure?
Well, there isn't an easy way to do that, to be perfectly honest, Sue and Sarah. Um, but there are some things that you can do to ensure that if mistakes are made, they don't burn a customer or create major issues. And that gets back to those action learning programs or task forces. Find difficult challenges that are internal to your organization. And you can assign a group of high potentials or people that are in your development program to solve that specific problem. So if it works, great, you got great benefit. If it doesn't work, the whole thing stayed internal anyway, and there's not much exposure in the marketplace. That's one really effective way to do that, and that's how I would start with it.
All right, great questions. I'll go ahead and wrap up for today. For those of you who are attending that for HRCI credit, I put a link to the chat panel in the right-hand side of your screen. I'll also send out a link to the completion certificate as well as the slides and follow-up information in an email that you'll receive around 4 p.m. Central Time today. Hope you'll consider joining us for a future webinar. Next week's session is on taking the pain out of performance reviews. All of our weekly webinars are approved for HRCI credit, so hope you'll consider joining us again. Again, thank you for all the great questions today. Really enjoyed them. And thank you, Chris, for presenting with us.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. We really appreciate it and hope to see you on a webinar soon.